Hey everyone, I'm James McCormick, and welcome back to the MSL Podcast. For today's episode, we have a special guest. He is the Senior Vice President and Head of Team Partnerships at Fenway Sports Management. Please welcome Chris Valente.
Hey James, how you doing?
Doing good. How's it been?
I'm great. Happy Friday. Happy holiday season. You getting ready to go home?
Pretty much. I don't have any final tests coming up, so I've been pretty thankful for that. The projects this past week have been a little hectic, but the trade-off's going to be worth it.
Hanging out at UMass, having a good old time on your parents' dime. I appreciate that. That's great. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. So, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I am a proud UMass alum. I graduated now over 20 years ago, which is crazy to say, and also sad at the same time. So, a class of 04, majored in sports management. And then went on to be in this crazy business for the last 21 years in a multitude of roles, starting with the New York Giants and working my way through the NHL, AHL, all the way back here to Fenway Sports Group, where I currently work.
Yeah. And then you also mentioned right before we started recording, you've done 200 episodes of your own podcast.
Yeah, I did. So my good buddy, Rob Crane, who is currently with the Boston Celtics, approached me probably 5 years ago about starting a podcast. And I had no idea what the hell we were doing and kind of flipped on the mic and saw where it went. And the whole gist of it was literally to give people such as yourself insight into our business, right? We thought there's not many people that currently work in the industry that are able to give a behind the scenes purview in terms of what you need to do to be successful. So that the whole mantra was to help people get their career started and give them kind of the answers to the test. So yeah, we interviewed people across the industry and we kind of gave advice on a weekly basis. And it actually happened during COVID, which was even crazier, which even gave us more time to actually do it. But it was amazing. It was so much fun. It was called Front Office Features. We ran for a while. The reason it had to stop was our life, our children, and our job got in the way a little bit. But it was a really, really fun time. And it made Rob and I have something to do during COVID to not drive our wives crazy, essentially.
It's always good to find that hobby, especially during COVID.
Yes, those were dark times, especially in our industry. But no, it got us through and made some really cool connections along the way, and hopefully helped a student or two get their career started in the industry.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I thought I'd start off with a little bit of an icebreaker, kind of with your path in sports. What kind of drew you into working into the sports industry?
Yeah, probably the cliche dumb answer that a lot of people give is I like sports, I play sports, I wanted to work in sports. But no, I went through a couple things when I was in high school. I was playing sports. I thought I was going to play sports in college, had some injuries, and then got derailed from that. And I didn't even know sports management was honestly a thing as I was exploring where I was going to go to college. And sports management at the time, at that point, was not a well-rounded industry as it is today. There wasn't many colleges that actually offered sports management. And so when I told my parents I was going to go to college and major in sports, they looked at me like I had 5 heads and said, what are you going to ever do with that? Like, how are you ever going to make a career or make any money? And as I explored opportunities and I found that UMass had the program, I fell in love with the school quickly. When I went and visited, it was far enough away yet close enough too from that perspective. I'm from New Jersey, so it was a good easy 3.5 hour ride, but it was the best decision I ever made, clearly, as I sit here today. The friendships that I was able to form and the experience that I was able to garner from UMass to which led me to my illustrious 21-year career.
Yeah. I was going to say, when I was looking at the schools when I applied for college, one thing that stood out to me about UMass, because not a lot of schools did this, especially a lot of the ones I was initially interested in, was that our sport management program's in the business school, which a lot of the other schools don't offer sport management in their business school.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of backdoored it into SOM at the time. I think sports management was just joining Eisenberg when
Wow.
So I luckily got to say I graduated from Eisenberg, which was a badge of honor without actually having to do all the Eisenberg typical standards to get in, which was great. So yes, in true sports fashion, we don't live in the real world, and that was also a nice little shortcut into Eisenberg at the time. So yeah, no, I was very fortunate to actually go through SOM, and
Mm-hmm.
at the so I mean, when I came back and visited you guys even a couple of weeks ago, the amount that even building has changed is unbelievable. The amount the campus has changed is unbelievable, and I'm still jealous that you somehow have the number one dining in the country. Because when I was there, that was not the case at all.
Really?
Remotely, no, far from it. My buddies who worked in the dining hall, I would not equate to being the number one chefs in the country. So yes, a lot has changed in 21 years since I left.
Wow. I was gonna say because like I'm off campus, and even I still have like I made sure I still had a dining plan so I could still go once in
Yeah,
a
no,
couple
that
times
was
a
the
week.
first.
I'd
As
say.
soon as we got off campus, we wanted to get our what it was like the OCMP or something, off campus meal plan,
Or
so we could order from
YCMP,
Bruno.
I think it's called right
It
now.
was OCMP at the time. I think it's
Okay.
YCMP.
Wow.
Yeah, so we had an off-campus meal plan where we could order from all the restaurants in town because we had wanted nothing to do with the dining hall once we got off campus.
Oh, so wait, you could order from like restaurants outside of UMass.
Yes, so like
Okay.
Bruno's
Wow.
and like all it was worth it. Every swipe was worth X amount of dollars to go to a spot that you could actually order and get delivery from like Wings, DP Dough, all the hot
Wow.
spots. Yeah.
I was gonna say DP Dough is awesome.
Oh, I mean, awesome's a relative term. It's awesome probably at 3 a.m, but it's probably
Yeah.
not that great on a sober Tuesday at 5 o'clock. It's probably it has a time and place to be awesome.
That's fair. That's fair. All right. So when you spoke at our MSL meeting a couple weeks ago, you mentioned that you wouldn't be where you are now without your experience working for the Albany Devils in the AHL. So I was just kind of curious, what were some of the biggest lessons that you learned there?
Yeah, so for sure. So I was working for the New Jersey Devils at the time at the NHL level, and when I was approached after we purchased the Lowell Lock Monsters, this was 2006. So I was still young in my career. I'd always didn't I never wanted to be pigeonholed, right? I never wanted to be just a
Mm-hmm.
one-trick pony, and I wanted to be like a well-rounded individual. So when the Devils approached me about potentially coming up here, we were the first NHL team to buy our AHL franchise. So we wanted to kind of try and change the model and operate it as such. I mean, I was 24, I think, but
Mm-hmm.
I looked at it as an opportunity to like take a risk. And people looked at me like I had five heads again, which I was used to after my parents. So they're like, "You're going to leave the NHL and go to the AHL?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely," because I want to learn it all. And with doing that, I was able to really see how the whole ecosystem works together, right? So I was not just doing one thing. I was involved in the whole entire operation, whether it be corporate partnerships, community relations, lease negotiations,
Wow.
politics, concessions, like everything, right? So I saw how the whole entire operation worked, which allowed me later on in my career to be empathetic to how each department is affected by a partnership, right? So it's versus
Mm-hmm.
just walking into a communications person or a marketing person saying, "I need you to do this." You can approach it in a very different manner in that, look, I know this is going to do this or this to you. Like, what can I do to help you make sure that this works versus just shove something down their throats?
Yeah.
And I got leadership experience at an early age. I got management experience at an early age, and it just helped me later on until I got to today to not be starting from scratch. So the
Mm-hmm.
risk I took was well worth it.
Yeah. I was gonna say because like that was one of my favorite things that you said during our meeting. Because like you said, people if you don't work, in the industry, people would see like you going from major league hockey to minor league hockey is kind of a downgrade, but like that experience is kind of like invaluable, especially now.
It's the worst stereotype misnomer you can place on somebody. And now, like, having been on both sides, look, there's some facts to this, right? There's some people who are just way better suited to work in the minors, and there's some people who in the majors could never work in the minors, and vice versa, right?
Hmm.
To look at someone and say you can't do what I do at the major league level because you're only worked in the minor league level is just very short-sighted. Like, I really learned how to sell. Like, nobody needs Lowell Devils or Albany Devils partnerships or tickets, right? There's
Hmm.
nothing that's a must-have in that situation. So you have to learn creativity, you have to learn perseverance, you have to learn all the things that go into the principles of how you get to a partnership. So when I got to the major league level and was selling partnerships, nothing changed other than the back page, and it was commas and zeros. There was just more dollars attached to the way that you go about the business. But sometimes the major league people, and I'm someone who works at that level now, just have this really bad view of like, oh, they work in the minors, they wouldn't understand it, which is the furthest thing from the truth, quite frankly. I
Yeah.
mean, look where I'm sitting. I was at the minor league level, so it's not a thing. Rob, who I mentioned earlier, he's at the Boston Celtics and did the jersey patch deal. He worked in minor league sports for 20 years, right? It doesn't matter. But now, personality-wise, there are differences. So not everyone can do the jump, and some people are just better suited for other things. But to be disqualified because you work in the minors to get to a major league level is just again, short-sighted.
Yeah. So with working with sport partnerships at FSM, what's something people don't usually know about sport partnerships?
Yeah. How hard it is. The perception is really like, oh, you work for the Red Sox, the Liverpool, the Penguins, whatever, the NASCAR. People must just call you and do deals and give you money. We do not get call-ins. No one is calling us and sitting around being like, hey, let's just want to call the Red Sox tomorrow and give these guys some money. The amount of effort and work that goes into getting a partnership done is truly incredible. And the amount of people that it takes to get said partnership done is truly incredible. It takes an army, man. And it also takes a long time typically. Like the difference between ticket sales, which can be very transactional at points, compared to partnerships, is just there's so many factors that go into someone saying yes and a deal getting done. You can be talking to a CMO for a year about a potential thing, and all of a sudden that CMO is gone, right? And their marketing strategies change, and all of a sudden you're dealing with a whole new person and a whole new like in terms of people and culture that they're trying to address and whatever it may be. You can do everything right to get to a point where you think you're about to get a partnership done, and then something gets in the way and it doesn't happen. I say, like, we are sometimes, I guess, psychotic. The amount of effort and time that goes into our yearly job to where you actually see results is small, right? So if you get 5-6 partnerships done as an individual, that's an amazing year. If you get 5 or 6 sales done in most things in business, you're going to get fired, right? So it is not normal at all. And there's also just a lot of misconceptions about like the day-to-day and what goes into it and what partnership people do. It's a grind. Like you have to be willing to like be very persistent and patient. And if you can't handle that and you can't handle the ups and downs and the roller coaster, it is a bumpy ride along the way.
So kind of like to follow up on that. So you mentioned like sometimes, the person you're working with switches and then the deal may fall through. Like how do you kind of push through that or like, not let it like affect you personally, I guess is more of a way to put it.
Great question. So early in your career, it's hard, right? You live and die and you're like, you live and die by every deal. And when things go sideways, you can get down. And when you do a deal, you can get really high. And as you go through your career, you learn that you can't live and die by every deal. And you shouldn't have to live and die by every deal because otherwise you're just not doing your job well, because there should be enough going on and you should have enough backfill that you should not be worried that if someone doesn't do this, that your whole year is made or break by that in terms of that potential partnership. Right. So it's cliche, but it's trying to stay as even keel as possible is probably the best advice you can get. It's hard, right? Because you get so emotionally attached to sometimes some of these partnerships. And when they don't happen or they go away or they fall apart or there's issues, it can wear on you, right? But essentially you have to train yourself not to be just beholden to every potential partnership that comes along, that you're not going to waste also your time, because sometimes what happens early on is tickets, whatever it might be, you keep talking to someone with the hope that something may happen. And eventually you gain this radar, I guess, if you call it, as you go through your career of like, yeah, this is probably a waste of my time. I'm just going to cut bait and move on to something where my time is more valuable, because there's so much going on in our world that we don't have enough time to waste.
Wow. Yeah. That's really interesting to hear then, because like, now you're in a position where you could say, I'm not, we're not going to move forward with this anymore. Or...
Yeah, no, the most freeing thing I ever do, I think, for my team or anytime I'm on a partnership call with a potential client is I tell them, look, if you don't want to do this, that's okay. Like, we'll be fine. And like, we can keep talking in a year if you change your mind. But it almost puts people on the defense. We're like, whoa, what do you mean you don't need me? I'm like, well, we don't. Like, and the truth of the matter is the FSG will be fine. And so will your company. So like, if this isn't going to work, like, let's just cut bait.
Yeah, wow. I was gonna say that's got to be nice.
Well, it is, because then it also, like, it saves you time, because then eventually if the person just truly wants to do something, they'll be like, whoa, 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 no, 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 like, I want to do this,
Hmm.
or like, you know what, never mind. Like, it eventually puts all your cards on the table. And partnerships have to be a two-way street, right? It's not sales. Corporate partnerships in sports have to be, both sides have to be invested. And if you can find early on that only one side is, and it's you, then you're never going to get this partnership across the line because they're not fully invested. And the
Hmm.
other thing that you come to a reality is, we talk to a lot of categories across the whole entire business ecosystem, right? They may work in insurance, they might work in tech, they might work in finance. The coolest part of their day is talking to Fenway Sports Group, right? The rest of their job is pretty mundane and so forth. So, like, sometimes people just like to talk to us, so they continue to talk to us. So if you kind of sniff that out early on, of like, yeah, of course you want to just keep talking to the Boston Red Sox, that's fine and all, but like, I have to actually go do a job, right? So you have to be willing to be able to say and put the cards authentically on the table, and just like call a spade and say, look, if this isn't going to work for you, that's okay. And like, we'll just move on. And then you kind of save yourself some heartache and like just getting that off your pipeline and all the pipeline reports that people just like to sometimes fill up with minutia, but it's not real.
Hmm. That's real. That's really interesting to hear, honestly, because I feel like for a lot of people, like that's not something where you really have that position.
Yeah, man. Look, early in my career, I was probably doing the exact same thing, because you're afraid to say the wrong thing. And you always, like, you have what you call hope. You like hope
Hmm.
something happens versus actually making something happen. And there's not many 23, 24-year-olds who have the ability or the confidence to say that. And that just comes, again, with experience. That's not something you usually can just like have. I mean,
Yeah.
that's unique. And it just unfortunately comes with age as you leave UMass 20 years ago. But I didn't come out of school being like, oh yeah, I have this confidence to be able to say that to somebody. Not even close.
Yeah.
But in my position now, like, that's kind of my role for my team, is to help them facilitate and shepherd those conversations along so we don't get stuck.
Nice. So, kind of moving on with you manage. I think you mentioned like 16 different brands or somewhere
Yeah,
in that
FSG, it's
ballpark.
about that. Yeah, it changes
Yeah.
by the hour probably, but yeah, around that over the course of the FSG portfolio. Yeah.
So, how do you kind of approach creating these partnerships that span multiple properties that are within the FSM or FSG portfolio, I should say? Because you
Yeah,
mentioned
man, that
Fenway Sports Management and Fenway Sports Group are two different entities, right?
So yes and no. So this is the confusing part. So Fenway Sports Group is the parent company for all of it, right? So everything
Hmm.
under the FSG umbrella, which is the Red Sox, Nesson, the Music Hall, the Bowl Game, Liverpool, the Penguins, Roush Fenway, now the PGA, Boston Common Golf, the Frogs, like all the things that FSG owns and operates, falls under the FSG umbrella. FSM, where I sit, is the partnership arm for those entities, right? So we are the responsible for driving the partnership revenue across the portfolio. So we kind of sit in the center of all of it. We're like what we consider ourselves the connective tissue of FSG. So when
Hmm.
we go talk to a brand, this is the kind of answer your question. This is the secret sauce. This is the hard part actually about working here. You have to be a quasi expert about Liverpool, Red Sox, Penguins, LeBron James, PGA, and you have to think like a marketer. So when I talk to a CMO or we talk to a brand, if we go in there as a salesperson just trying to sell them something, you're dead in the water. And this kind of applies to anything. Forget FSM, FSG in everybody's scenario. You need to put yourself in their shoes. What would you do if you were the CMO of this brand? What would you recommend to them and as a marketing idea? So just because we might have a Red Sox opportunity available when we start talking to this brand, if they start saying things that lead me to say, okay, this Red Sox make no sense. They're talking about global. They're talking about Indonesia. They're talking about Asia. I need to turn all of a sudden my Liverpool hat on and say, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. We need to be able to pivot. Because if you go in with preconceived notions of what you're trying to do, and they have a completely different mantra and what they're giving you as their objectives, if
Hmm.
you're not able to pivot to that point and start trying to do what they want versus what you want, again, that's the secret sauce. You need to be able to give people back what they're looking for versus what you're trying to do. And yeah, you may have objectives and you may have things that you need to get done still on a property basis, etc. But if you're talking to a brand and they have zero interest in baseball and zero interest in the Red Sox, but they're all about Sidney Crosby, you better be able to pivot to that conversation pretty quickly. So it's not easy. And when you're young and you're trying to get your career going and you're trying to do just one property, let alone 16,
Mm-hmm.
it can be daunting. And you can kind of get lost in the fray of where you're trying to kind of come up with what the solution may be, because that's all we really do, James, is we sit with these brands, we hear them out, we listen intently. We have a whole army of people in solutions, creative, that help the sales team get these partnerships done, because we come back to them with what essentially is a marketing recommendation of how they should leverage our properties and our assets with a price tag at the back page. So like that's where the sales comes in. But really, when you boil it down, we're doing sports marketing deals for these brands.
That's honestly really cool to hear because, like we talked about earlier with the Albany Devils, all these different moving parts, you have experience if you need to pivot with, like, obviously with the different teams within FSM, but also marketing or sales, depending on what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it's for sure. And like you gotta have to be able to see through the forest a little bit, right? So like if you're just what's in front of you and what you have is like an asset sheet, and like we don't sell a la carte. We don't go into someone and be like, oh, here's a menu of things you can just buy. Like it just doesn't
Hmm.
work that way. It's also just there's no rate card per se either. Like there's no, oh well, we put our finger in there, we kind of make it up honestly as we go, and then there's a negotiation, because there's nobody who ever says, well, here's the price, give it to me. Those are
Yeah.
tickets. Tickets are tickets. This is the price, take it or leave it, right? So we have a lot of flexibility in what we do and how we build things. We build every single potential partnership deck from the ground up. We take the look, the feel, the logo, they're all their style, and put it into the partnership deck for them, so they align and they can see how we align. Our creative team is amazing. Like the decks that we produce are just beyond quality that you can even imagine, compared to some stuff we see out there and from others. And it goes a long way, right? Because you're building that trust with the brand, who says, wow, you took a time to understand who we were and incorporate your brand into mine. We're not just saying Liverpool, 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 Red Sox, Red Sox, Red Sox. We're saying like, no, here's your brand and our brand combined, and this is what it's going to
Hmm.
look like
And you said you build it up from the ground up each time?
every time.
Wow.
So we have the FSM Associate Program. So those folks are extremely key in the process. One of our other alums, Allie,
Hmm.
who's here crushing it. They're on all the calls with our sales team, right? So they're listening, thinking, hearing through what the brand is saying. After that call, the team gets together, figures out what type of assets we're going to put in front of them. You build a whole thing in Salesforce that goes to creative solutions involved, helping tell the story. Because quite frankly, the why, and I know we talked about this at the MSL meeting, is just as important as the how, right? You need to
Hmm.
hook the brand up front about the why. So our data insights team, what data makes us show that we are the right brand and the right property for these folks? And then like, what's the values? What's the story? Because partnerships is all about telling a story. So that all that work goes into it. And then our creative team takes all that input and builds the deck, giving back what they, and like regurgitating what we've given them. But they're able to make it look very presentable, I guess, versus
Hmm.
me sitting in a PowerPoint being like, your logo here, right? So it's a full-on operation to get to even a proposal. And then the fun starts, because then you start getting into the presentations, and it's never like, oh yeah, that's good, send me the contract, here we go. It could go
Hmm.
months, it could go weeks, it could go years. And there's just really there's no barometer to say this is how long it should take or how long it will take.
Wow. So, can you kind of walk us through, because you mentioned the presentation decks, but can you kind of walk us through what goes into developing and pitching these major partnership deals?
Yeah, that's, I mean, so from soup to nuts, it's the early stages is usually the associates are identifying prospects, or the sales teams identifying prospects, our research and insights teams identifying prospects. I mean, we've put a lot into the pre sale part of this, where we're identifying brands that we think we should reach out to. And when you
Hmm.
reach out to a brand, and that's what the sales team comes in, you're not trying to sell them anything. All you're trying to do is get their attention to take a call, because you don't know enough about them yet from the CMO or the CEO or the owner or the VP of marketing, whoever it may be that you're reaching out to really be concrete in what you're putting in your email of what you're trying to pitch. You're just saying like, hey, here's some nuggets of why we should talk. You're just, you're hoping that you open the door to find 15 minutes, 30 minutes of their time to say, this is why we should align and this is how we could potentially align. Then you go into the conversation, and that's where it goes from that point forward to what I just mentioned of the post call after you hopefully learn enough. Because really, like, our job is to be investigative reporters. We need to learn more about them than we need to talk about ourselves. So we need them to tell us what their marketing objectives are, what are their challenges, what are they trying to do. That way the light bulb in our minds can go off as the marketers in the room and say, I have an idea. This is what we can come back and show them. And then it's just from there, it's just like tweaking and retweaking and tweaking and tweaking and like the back and forth that comes over and over again from their feedback. Yeah. And then you continually just like hopefully then land the plane on what an overall partnership would look like.
And would you say that kind of like back and forth towards the end, that sometimes takes a while?
It can. And this is where, again, the people like to stay in what I call the hypothetical world. A lot of people will go, what if we do this? What if we did that? And it's like, yeah, we could. What if we did that? What eventually is on our job, this is where the sales part comes in. We need them to say, look, if you do this, we'll do the deal for X amount of dollars. Like, we're always in the business of trying to solidify an offer that's firm from them that we can then work with our properties and say, all right, if we're willing to do X, Y, Z, we're going to generate X amount of dollars. So you're just trying to stay out of that hypotheticals because you can live in that world, in that space for a long, long time where people say, well, what if we possibly did this activation or this act? And it's just like, you just get stuck in this endless circle of like, what ifs. So that's where like, you got to have the ability and then confidence to say to them, like, look, I'm not going to bring this hypothetical to my boss or the property unless you tell me if I do this for you, we're actually going to do the partnership. And that's, again, that's where you put all the cards on the table. And that's where you see if someone's real or not.
Yeah. So you kind of, we kind of touched upon this earlier. How do you balance the different needs? Because you mentioned earlier balancing, Red Sox, Liverpool, LeBron, the Penguins. How do you kind of balance that? Because you mentioned that's pretty hard sometimes.
Yeah, so there's a lot of mouths to feed. And my role with where I oversee is working with our teams, specifically then the heads of the properties of those, and understanding what they need. And they kind of direct what their budgets are, what their needs are. And then in my job is to figure out the strategy, and with our team is how we're going to go and accomplish that, right? So the Red Sox KPIs and objectives are very different than the RFK objectives. It's different than LeBron and Maverick Carter's objectives, right? So we are consistently taking input from them to figure out how we're going to go about figuring out to meet those needs of each property. Each property operates completely independently. Everybody has different rules and regulations based on the league that they sit in. They have different categories that they can do deals in, right? There is no one size fits all for anybody across our property. Each individual who runs each property is very different than the other. So you're different with you're dealing with different personalities, different everything, right? So at the end of the day, as much as you're externally selling, you're also internally selling, because you're just trying to build that trust and that camaraderie with those folks as well, to ensure that everybody is aligned. When we go to market, we are saying the same thing and speaking from the same hymn.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever ran into that issue before, where like sometimes you're kind of on a different page from the property you're trying to
yeah, of course, market. Right? Because that's inevitable. That's just life. You're going to have disagreements. You're going to have different philosophies. You might think the one way to doing your way is better than the other. You might say, why don't we just do this because the brand wants to do this? And everybody has their reasons, right? So yes, that's just natural and discussion and it's healthy debate. And hopefully you get to a point where you can have a good compromise to figure it out. But yes, the number one thing that most salespeople and corporate partnership people get frustrated by is the property, if not why they won't do something, or will they do something, right? So navigating those challenges and those pitfalls and avoiding them as much as possible is where we try and land. But it's inevitable, and just the amount of stuff that we deal with and the amount of people that we are dealing with is you're going to run into roadblocks along the way.
Yeah. So do you have a favorite project or like a partnership within FSG that you've been involved with?
So it's like asking who's your favorite kid. Yeah, there's a bunch, right? So like, and this is some of my colleagues who have been around as long as I have too. it's weird is you kind of start to get a little bit numb to when they happen because you're just so busy and you're on to the next one. The thing about
Hmm.
FSM and FSG is we have no time to breathe and sit back and kind of enjoy what we just accomplished because it's not about just one property. Like if you worked for the Kansas City Royals and that's all you do and that's all you work for every day, all day long, that's all you eat, sleep, breathe, and think about is the Kansas City Royals, right? When you work for FSM, you're thinking about 16 different properties. So even though you might just accomplish a massive Liverpool partnership, we just announced a couple of them recently.
Hmm.
You're so far already on to the next thing that you sometimes have a trouble of like sitting back and like enjoying what you just accomplished. So, but for me personally, yeah, there's a couple like being part of getting to do a title partnership for the LPGA and an event that we brought an event back to Boston a couple of years ago in the FM Championship was really cool to be like, and you walk around when every time I walk around the event now, I'm like, this all happened because of part of me and what I was able to do, which is kind of like a weird moment is that you're like, oh, this is cool. And as you're walking around, nobody knows you did this
Yeah.
or and just people, fans are there and kids are there and they're experiencing it. And you're like, huh, this is awesome. Like, this is what it's all about. And then I've done one cross property deal with Wasabi, which was amazing. And it's built a friendship with the CMO there, Mike Welts. And he's been an amazing partner. And some of the things that we've done together have been transformative for their brand and their business. And that always makes you feel good. And there's ones that are really community focused and community relations related that you see the good that comes out of our industry where you can give back. And it's things like that where make you just like all the effort and time that we put into this, make it all worth it.
I feel like that's a common theme based on like everybody I've talked to that's worked in the sports industry. Every time I'm like, "Oh, what's your favorite, favorite thing that's happened at your current job?" And every time it's like, getting to see, you know, people like making people's days basically
Yeah, I
at these
think,
events.
look, this will probably go into a different avenue here about my soapbox about the why of
Hmm.
people working in sports. And I think once you have that light bulb moment of, well, I am paid to do this, right? This is my job, quote unquote.
Hmm.
This is my career where I get access to the most amazing things in the world to be able to say that I have the ability to open that door to others and provide that same opportunity to them and bring them closer to feeling like they're 13 years old again or 8 years old again. And that first memory that they ever experienced back when they first stepped foot into Fenway or Yankee Stadium or wherever it may be, and trigger that emotion that comes out because of what sports means to them or what the team means to them. When you do a partnership with somebody, again, when I talked about insurance and financial and tech and biopharm, whatever, their jobs are mundane compared to what we do every day. So when they get to come here and be associated with our team and our organization and give back to the community and have a 5K for veterans or have the Jimmy Fund where you're raising money for childhood cancer and you're using the power of sports to inflict positive change in people's lives, that's what we do, right? So like
Hmm.
once you understand what our job, and then when the sports management people that are graduating from UMass understand that when you sit in an interview and why you want to work in sports isn't because you played sports, you like sports, like you and 6 billion other people in the world, and a light bulb goes off of like what your job actually is. And it's really being able to afford others the access to what I get paid and get lucky enough to call a career. I look back all the time and sometimes I'm trying to do it more and more, reflect of what I'm been able to do and have essentially a pinch me moment sometimes where I
Hmm.
look around and say, this is my office, is Fenway Park and PPG Paints Arena or Daytona 500 or Augusta, Georgia. Right? It's unbelievable. Like if you told me 25 years ago, this is where I'd be doing, I'd be like, sign me up. Until you actually experience it, you don't really fully understand what then our job is. And it's to really be able to afford others the opportunity to experience the exact same thing and to let their brands, their families, their kids, their relatives experience the exact same thing that we get paid to do.
That's really awesome to hear because that was you were talking to us at the MSL meeting about the why. That was one of the big things that you talked about during our meeting.
Yeah, it's the most important. It's the same thing as the partnership. The why is more important than the back page. Once you get
Hmm.
everybody hooked on the why up front, the what and the how should be easy. How we bring it to life and what the assets are should be secondary compared to why we should partner. Why do we make sense to be partners in this? Why do I make sense for this role? Why do I want to go to UMass? Why am I doing this podcast? Right. So like, if you answer all those questions, everything else becomes much clearer in life, because it just opens up the door to like, why you're doing something. Someone can teach you the what and the how.
Yeah. So kind of, you mentioned, helping students. What should students do when trying to break into the sports industry?
Yeah. So while they're in college, you need to find as much experience as possible, whether it be volunteering, internships, fellowships, whatever it may be, because you want to be able to, again, tell a story when you graduate of what you did, that it also opens the door to what you like and what you don't like. So it makes it much easier for you to sit in an interview come post college and say, with conviction, I want this job. If you're using the words, I think I want this job, or I'm still trying to figure it out, or I want to get my foot in the door, you're dead in the water, because we want to hire people who know exactly what they want. And that's what college is for, is to figure that out, right? Once you start coming, unfortunately, to adult life and 22 years old and there's no more Antonios, you have to be able to say, hey, I want this role and this is why I want it. And this is why you should hire me over everybody else. If you don't know that emphatically and don't have that coming through, you're going to end up in that proverbial pile of the people who are just like, yeah, I played sports. I like sports. I love the Red Sox. I want to work for the Red Sox. That does not qualify you whatsoever. You're unfortunately going to graduate with a lot of other people who have the exact same diploma, the exact same GPA, and the exact same 1 or 2 internships. What you need to do is, while you're in college, is talk to as many people as you can, find out what you like, what you don't like. So when you come to tell your story, it is personal, it is with passion, and it completely separates you from that pack, that someone knows when they're hiring you, they're getting you for you and what you truly want, versus someone who's still trying to find their way. Now, look, the reality of the situation is at 22, 23 years old, you probably are still trying to find your way. And that's okay. At 41, 43, 40, you're still trying to find your way. That's going to change every couple of years. But in that moment, you better nail that answer, because it's going to be very, very imperative for you to get the role over the other people that have the exact same qualifications, which is a diploma, for that exact same role.
So I was just kind of curious, how has being an alum, not only of UMass Amherst, but also the McCormick Department of Sport Management, how has that helped you in your career?
So I would say unequivocally, UMass prepared me for my early years compared to my peers who were not at UMass, right? So UMass did a very good job of joining in my head early on of what I was getting myself into, because I think most people have no idea what to expect when you first join the sports industry. But I was told very early on in Sports 101, you're going to make no money, you're going to work a lot of hours, and you're probably going to have to move. And if you don't like that, time to leave. And it just resonated with me. So when I got to the industry and I got my first gigs and I looked around, the success rate of people staying in long-term is low. And most people last 1 to 2 years and are like, screw it, I'm making no money. My friends are out on Thursday night partying. I'm busting my butt. I have working 80 hours a week, all these game nights, working weekends, working Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever it may be. I'm living in wherever it might be in the middle of nowhere because I had to move because that's where the job was. I knew what I was getting myself into. And UMass just did an amazing job of doing that. And obviously the network that UMass has, because of the program that it possesses, is vast. I think a lot of students probably don't do a good enough job of using us to reach out to us in the meantime while they're trying to figure out and line their career and have questions or do networking. I get randomly reached out to by a lot of people all the time, and it's not a lot of UMass kids, quite frankly. So it's what you put into it is what you get in that sense. But no, UMass did an amazing job of preparing me unequivocally for when I got my career going, that I knew I was going to work a lot of hours, make no money, and just like have to grind. And I knew there was a light at the end of the tunnel, that if you kept going and you kept pushing and you didn't give up, it would be all worth it. And it 100% has been. I have zero regrets. I've loved every minute of my career except for maybe 1 or 2 minutes of it, but that's here nor there. And it's been really helpful to have that background to understand what the job was going to be and what it was going to take to be successful. And then from there, it's on the individual to take that advice or not and continue to persevere and push through.
Yeah. I 100% agree, because especially, I don't know, I don't know about when you were here, but like, a lot of my friends that, because like most of my friends are sport management majors, um, most of us work with UMass Athletics also. And I feel like that experience that I've gotten through the athletic department here has also been like
Yeah.
invaluable.
Yeah, we had the New Balance Soccer Fest that I worked on. We did a big sports business journal expose back in the day where we audited every team's website, where we got published in Sports Business Journal when I was 20 years old.
Wow.
We helped revive the golf course in Amherst because they were going out of business. We did a project for them. Like, UMass gave me a lot of opportunities. The reason I got my first job was the UMass internship track program, because I ended up doing an internship with the Giants that allowed me to do my credits and quote unquote and graduate, which also let me stay there after I was done when the program was over, which then led to my job with the Devils. So yeah, no, UMass 1,000% got my career off the ground because of the connections they had. My professors were amazing. I mean, Professor McKelvey's still there, Professor Master Alexis, like they're still there. Like, it just speaks to the program of like the continuity that it's had over the years. But yeah, no, it was the best decision I made for me, between the culture that I went to. I was there during the heyday of Boston sports versus New York. It was like the Yankees, Red Sox, the Aaron Boone home run. There was World Series, there was Patriots, Super Bowls. It was amazing. And my closest friends actually aren't even sports management program people. It's just friends from UMass that I still like essentially live near and work with and still go out to this day every month with them for dinner. So yeah, no, it's UMass. I can't speak enough highly about it. I think it's the best value if you're a Massachusetts resident to do from a degree perspective for in-state tuition. I stupidly paid out-of-state tuition because I didn't live here, but still, it was all worth it.
I'm in the same boat.
Yeah, no, it's funny when you look around and you see the Massachusetts residents. You're like, you get to pay what? So either way, it's paid off in dividends.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So last question. What do you feel is the best career advice that you've ever received?
The key to success is being inconvenienced, right? So going the extra mile when necessarily someone might just take the easy road and say, I don't want to drive this thing over to them. I don't want to go see this client. I don't want to like go the extra mile. The people who sit on the sidelines just hoping for things to happen are the ones that'll be left on the sidelines, and the ones who just make things happen are the ones that'll be successful, right? So this industry is made up of people who do not say. You have to be willing to roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty, and do whatever it takes to be successful. And a lot of those times there's doing things that you never want to do. I've been in mascot suits. I've been on the ice picking up chuck-a-pucks. I mean, if I'm never going to ask my team to do something I'm not willing to do, so like I feel like you got to lead by example in that case. And I also am just a big believer that if you work for your team and not the other way around. So yeah, the key to success is just being inconvenienced, because doing the things other people don't want to do, and it'll just separate you from the people who just say they're willing to do whatever it takes to win, but you're actually willing to do whatever it takes to win.
Yeah, that's awesome, honestly, because nothing good comes easy, or nothing worth it comes easy.
No, it does not. Nothing in this business has been handed to me. I feel like I've earned everything I've gotten. No one's given me a job just because I knew somebody or any nepotism along the way. I outworked. I think I outworked people to get to where I did, and just be a good person. Honestly, like there's no reason to have any ego about what we're doing. Like, we're not curing cancer by any stretch of the imagination, and you don't need to act like you are. And it's just about being a good person and sending the elevator back down. Look, the time is just as valuable as money. You'll see too, James, when you graduate, giving people back time to people at UMass. Like, give your time to them. Give them advice. Tell them what works, what doesn't work. That goes for anybody. You might not have a lot of money early in your life to be able to donate back, but you can donate your time. And that's just sometimes more valuable. You can always get money back. You can't get time back, right? So donate your time to people and give them advice and help them get their foot started. And it's the most rewarding thing. It's why the podcast I started years ago. It's probably why you're doing this podcast. Right? I'm assuming it's just to help people, right? So it's really just, it's an invaluable lesson that you learn. And if you're selfless, this business will take care of you.
So kind of to wrap it up, I know I said one last question, but kind of a wrap up here. Do you have any advice for a UMass student or specifically UMass students?
Yes, I do. Look, everybody at this point in your life has done everything you've done to get to this point, and you've studied, you've worked hard, you went to UMass, you chose sports management, you're trying to make a career out of it. Don't stop now, right? When the graduation time comes, don't settle. You have one shot to go chase your dream, and in your early 20s is the time to do it. Use the flexibility. If this is truly what you want to do, it's all worth it. You'll thank yourself years later by going for it versus being able to someone who just settles and says, I need a job. Don't worry about the next 5 years, worry about the next 5 minutes. This is the best career you could ever ask for. So if you truly want to do it, go out and make it happen. There's nothing holding you back other than yourself. And in the same token, if the opportunity that's best for you is someplace else and it's scary, go. You can always go home, right? So at the end of the day, you put all this effort in, you put all this time in, you do all these internships, you do all this experience, you spent all this money to get this degree, and then all of a sudden you settle. Don't let yourself do that. Keep going, be persistent, be patient, fight through, and go chase your dream, because at the 25 years from now, you'll thank yourself for doing it, and it'll all be worth it in the end. So please trust me on this. Your parents are like, you need a job, you need a job, you need a job. And I get it. But in the next couple months, if you do graduate, those couple weeks or months of you don't having the exact a job doesn't mean that you won't be okay in the long run. You won't even remember those couple weeks or months. It might stink and you might be bored. Don't get caught up with the Joneses about who's doing what and who else is doing everything else. Focus on you and chase what you want. Go get that, and you'll be very, very, very happy with your career, and you'll feel like you'll never have a job a day in your life.
Wow. I feel like I'm ready to run through a brick wall.
Let's go. Run through the wall, James. Turn around and run through that wall. You can end the podcast, and I just want you to run right through the wall.
right through my wall. Well, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today. This was really awesome to hear everything that you said.
My pleasure, buddy. Anything for UMass, and I'm glad you asked me. I'm glad we got to meet at the MSL meeting. And like I said, do me a favor. You owe me a couple things. You gotta go to McMurphy's and have a drink for me because when I was out there a couple weeks ago, it was closed, and I know they're moving. So have a beer for me. Have a beer for me at McMurphy's. Have a slice of cheese for me, and maybe hit some Bueno Isano. And then I heard Bruno's just closed, which is demoralizing. And then you can order some DP dough at late night and tell me how awesome it is at 3 a.m.
Yeah, I forgot I said that. Thank you so much, everybody. This is Chris Valente. If you like this episode, we have plenty more, both YouTube and Spotify. You can find us McCormick Student Leaders YouTube channel and McCormick Student Leaders podcast on Spotify. We also have Instagram and TikTok, so check us out there. Everybody, I'm James McCormick, and thank you for watching.